Hi, folks. This is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report. You know, I talked about the fact that this is a good time to make resolutions and to try to make us enjoy fishing as much as we can. Well, here's some of the things that I want you to be aware of, because you can take any lure that you tend to favor, that you tend to believe in, that you think is, going to help you catch more fish. And you can learn how to fish that in different ways, because most lures can be fished in a number of different ways. And I'm going to give you some of the thoughts that I have here. We can take one lure, and I'll just do it. It's probably a lure that most of you haven't discovered yet, even though it's probably the most old-fashioned of all, and that is a tube jig. A little tube, and I've described what a tube is, and if you don't know, you can look it up very quickly. But take a tube jig and you can fish it not just in the ways it was originally designed to be fished, but in a number of ways. And I'm going to give you the ways. One way you can take a tube or any other type of bait like that is by Ned rigging it, by fishing it in the Ned rig presentation. And that is just to take a jig head and fish it very slow. They're small lures, little lures, and just fish it very slowly. The other way you could fish the same lure that will change it is by using it as a drop shot bait. And what does that mean? You got a sinker on the bottom, and then you tie your bait above it. So that keeps it from snagging as much, from getting down there in the slime, and if you're in the St. Lawrence River, from gobies hitting it as much. But a tube jig on the end of a Ned rig, just to hook it on the bottom of the hook like that, that can be very effective. The third way, and a lot of you probably never heard of it, I haven't spoken about it, is Carolina rigging. Carolina, they use that word, but this came about decades ago. But it's taking, again, your bait, but having a sinker way up the line from it and then dragging that sinker along the bottom slowly as you're moving, and that allows a different presentation of the bait. The bait is constantly but slowly moving down there in the fish zone, which is normally near the bottom. Then another way to fish that tube jig, normally you have a tube head stuffed in this hollow body of the tube jig and your hook sticking out. Well, you can, instead of using a jig head, you could just use a hook and Texas rig it. And by Texas rigging it, it's hooking your hook in it, and then the hook point, again, goes back in the body and is kind of buried. So by doing it this way, you're not going to get snagged, and you can still fish it along the bottom in the same way. Another way is to just cast and retrieve. You can just cast that tube jig out, and instead of fishing it like you fish tube jigs, you can sort of reel it back in slowly and hop it up and down and fish it almost like you would a swim bait. And it'll work, and you can catch fish. Another way is to troll it. You can put a tube jig on, put it in its tube jig head, and instead of letting it go down and fish slowly on the bottom like a crayfish, just troll it along. And finally, you could even wacky rig it, hook it in the middle. You know, your mind is the limit to anything in life, including how you can go fishing and how you can present a lure. And it's amazing, if you take your favorite lure and fish it in different ways, it could become even better, because, one day the fish might be slow. Another day they might react quicker. And there's all kinds of reasons that their life is the way it is. And this allows us to sort of adapt to that. Anyway, I hope this is a pointer, and I hope it gives you some ideas that you can take any lure and fish it in lots of different ways. Until next time, folks, this is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report.